whether we're looking at American history, African American history, or a much wider global history, for so long, until really in the 1970s or 80s, historians told the stories of kings, rulers, popes, monarchs, generals in the wars, the discoverers, with all the problems that implies. Left out of that were women generally, people of color in their own places and in places where they had migrated forcibly or not. The working classes, the people who for a long time didn't have a vote in many places, the people who don't own land and don't own businesses and whose functions have been to kind of keep the wheels of capitalism going. I'm just looking at maybe like a 500 or 600 year history of capitalism. All of those voices were not the focus of the histories that were developed and taught for so long. And so we've been in a several decades long process in the academy of changing those stories. Poets have been trying to change those stories for a lot longer, but now we have so much more information to draw upon. It makes it so much richer to write those poems. Poetry travels. It's you don't need a lot of money to write it. You don't need a lot of money to print it and distribute it. The Black Arts Movement was one of those moments when, in the African American tradition, that was very palpable, and the fact that you could make a Xerox of your chapbook and sell it for 50 cents on the street corners, that made it possible to comfort and call a whole range of African Americans to a kind of political consciousness. To afflict the comfortable is always a hard thing, no matter what your vehicle, but because poetry at the same time has often been the province of a certain kind of elite, and it's one of our oldest genres. I mean, the novel is a baby compared to poetry. The essay is new compared to poetry. Print journalism comes in way, way after poetry. So poetry has a long tradition that makes it valuable, culturally valuable, and kings and aristocrats used to sponsor poets. It's a part of what we know we're supposed to know as a culture, and that makes poetry a genre that reaches such a wide audience, whether in print form, on YouTube now, at actual poetry readings. People stop and read poetry on the street or on the subway in New York. It travels. It has enlivened and enraged and sort of invigorated Black poets, the communities that I operate in, Cave Canem, among others. People, I think, feel a sense of purpose in writing that makes poetry more urgent than it sometimes is. And I think that there were threads of that have run consistently through the poetry in the African American tradition. But I really can't say how much it has meant to, I think, a generation that's emerging, that's my community, but at a generational remove, to see them being able to make the connection between why Black Arts Movement poets wrote the way they did, and to realize that, yeah, there are many ways to be a Black poet, but one of them is to name these truths that matter, not just in the abstract, but in a very concrete sense to people who are outside the community of poets and readers of poetry.